What's the most embarrassing thing a parent has done to you? I had C-cup boobs when I was 11 years old. My mom loved to loudly talk about them to anyone who would listen. Yeah, she's only 11. You wouldn't think from the way she's filled out up top. Then I'd start crying from the humiliation and she'd tell me to lighten up. When I was a senior in high school, I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come jumpstart my car. Now my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Motherfucker rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was the time a few years earlier that my mother had sent him up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts. He's always there for you when you f*** up though, isn't he? He'd give you the shirt off his back if he was wearing one. This is actually something people have said about him. Every time I made a mistake, big or small, my mom would tell my grandma. Then my grandma would proceed to tell the entire family, so when we had meetups I would never hear the end of it. On top of that, that same grandma would always tell me I didn't know anything and proceed to tell others I didn't know anything if I didn't have an answer to something I had to wait for. For example, my work schedule. I'm still insecure about that to this very day. To preface this, my mom has a way with words, as in she doesn't always know what a word means but uses it anyway, or she mispronounces things quite frequently. So I have this psychotic fucking hatred of feet and have had it for as long as I can remember. Not really sure why. Anytime feet are brought up, my mom never fails to tell whoever she is talking with that I had a foot fetish. We have tried to explain to her what that actually means, yet she does not seem to get it. I'm 35 now and this has been going on for at least 25 years. It is kind of mortifying. My two little brothers find it hilarious and thus I'm known as the foot fucker. My mom thinks being a slut means being messy. I learned this as she told my new opposite sex housemates at uni that I was a bit of slut. I have aggressive crons that started showing up around 8th grade. My mom took me to all of my doctor appointments, which were all pretty embarrassing because no teenage boy wants their mom involved in their butt-related illness. One particular visit, we were about halfway through the appointment when she whipped out a Cool Whip tub. Turns out the following night I used the bathroom and it didn't all go down. So she thought it would be helpful to load that up in our poor people Tupperware and haul it on into the doctor so he could look it over. He had the confused "what am I supposed to do with poop in a Cool Whip tub" face for a good 5 to 10 seconds, then politely dismissed it. Who'd have thought that there isn't any medical knowledge to be gained from fishing poop out of the toilet, refrigerating it overnight and schlepping it up for an office visit. Oh my god, this reminds me of this time I was caring for this 12-year-old girl and her mom. I'm an emergency room registered nurse, and mom had brought her daughter in for constipation. Mom was really over the top with worry, but it's her kid, so I cut her some slack. So I give the girl an enema, ask her to try to hold it for 20 minutes if possible. Then I leave the bedside to check on another patient. Out of the corner of my eye I see the girl doing the butt cheeks clenched sprint for the bathroom, mom trailing behind. Then I hear some shrieking coming from the bathroom. As it turned out, the enema was enormously successful. This petite 12-year-old girl had produced a shiz as big as my arm, and the mom freaked out, fished the monster turd out of the toilet and chased the doctor through the department, insisting the doctor look at the size of it, and screaming that this anaconda-like shiz must have caused internal damage or something. The poor daughter was sobbing in the bathroom, no pain, mostly from embarrassment. The doctor trying to get away from mom and the giant shiz, and me chasing mom with an empty bedpan insisting she put the turd in there instead of her hands. My mum's done plenty of embarrassing things, however the thing that jumps out the most would be what happened to my sister. She had been dating this guy for a year or two on and off. Now normally not important, but for the story it is. He's black and my family is English, so we're like paper white. This was all back when my sister and I were in high school. It was Christmassy and some family friends were invited over and everything was going great until it was time for gifts. My mum thinks she's hilarious. She gave my sister, who was a virgin still, a card pack of positions to try. Also remember, there were family friends there. She was already mortified by that. Worse was yet to come. He opens his gift and it has something else in it and a box of glow-in-the-dark condoms. Mum, it's so... My mum pulled up my skirt, causing me to involuntarily flash a room full of people at a Christmas dinner. I was absolutely mortified. She wanted to check for self-harm scars on my thighs apparently. I've never self-harmed before. She should not be allowed to consume alcohol. I went to school at an outpatient mental facility as a kid. It was Halloween, so the instructors let us paint our faces and do arts and crafts all day. I knew my mom didn't like Halloween for religious reasons, so I just gave myself a cat nose with whiskers and made sure not to write Happy Halloween on anything I made. When my mom came to pick me up, she screamed at me about how I knew better, made me go to the bathroom to wash my face, as well as made me throw away all the stuff I made in front of everyone. Your mom is the reason you were in that facility. When I think about it, the months I spent there were some of the happiest days of my childhood. When I was really young, maybe 5 or so, my dad got into a conversation with the cashier at the movie rental place. I had to pee, but every time I tried to get his attention, he brushed me off. I ended up peeing myself and he didn't notice until we got in the car and it smelled like pee. At least he was apologetic when he asked why I didn't tell him, and I explained what happened. If you didn't want him to ignore you the entire time, then you should just peed on his leg when the time came. Why are you peeing on my leg? I'm not. It's raining. Tell everybody at Thanksgiving dinner at her boyfriend's house about my tween bout with anorexia. I didn't want to be there in the first place, and she just kept going on and on about how I had carrots for dinner for a year until I had to shout at her to stop. I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teachers, who would send a letter home to everyone without specifically naming which child they noticed had lice, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent all. Yeah, she has head lice, so you need to check your kid. I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice, but kids don't realize that, so the whole class were calling me dirty and saying I infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. My mom and I used to try and embarrass each other. It was fun. One day we were at Safeway and I was in the toilet paper aisle, and there was a very hot guy in there as well. She held up a mega pack of toilet paper and yelled, "Hey sweetheart, this will be perfect on your sensitive bum. How's your diarrhea right now?" I thought I would die. My family is like this. I'm in my late 20s, so the playing field is level. I was helping my mom shop for Thanksgiving dinner, and she made some snarky remark about extra small condoms when we passed the family planning aisle. Later we were passing the pharmacy, so I faked an untied shoe while she walked ahead. Once she got a good distance away, I shouted, "Hey mom, the extra large tampons right?" as I pointed to the tampon section. Then nonchalantly explained to the shocked couple standing next to me that it wasn't my fault that I was a massive baby. Your family is awesome, yet I'm glad I'm not part of it. My dad told a guy I had a crush on that I liked him. I was 16 or 17 at the time. Still mortified when I think about it. Yeah, but you two are happily married now, right? In the rom-com version of my life, he declared he liked me too, and we drove off into the sunset. In reality, I had to stop shopping in the store he worked at and live with the shame. After I submitted a job application to a manager when I was 16, my mother barged up and started going on and on about how I was really shy and not much of a people person. Yeah, that's what a manager wants to hear about an applicant for customer service. I was 10 years old and my two best friends, girl and boy, were sleeping over that night, and my dad, the oversharer that he is, proceeds to tell my friends a story on how I was conceived in the back of a car on a cold night somewhere. I was so mortified, and my friends were just as uncomfortable as I was, and we collectively agreed to ignore the whole ideal. Also, he brought the cake out to the lounge wearing only his undies and a bow tie. It was a rough night. My mother insisted on seeing exactly what I bought for clothes to make sure they weren't too baggy until I went away to college. When I was 17, we were buying jeans at the Gap, and when I wouldn't basically do a fashion show for her for every pair of pants I tried on, she crawled her 58-year-old self under the door of the dressing room where I was trying them on. I'm a guy, and the dressing room had a line out the door. Everybody saw, everybody heard. Edit. Also, all of your jeans are in the laundry. Just wear a pair of mine. Edit 2. Your waist is 2 inches above your belly button, not halfway between your belly button and your penis. Thanks, mom. I've mentioned it before on askreddit, but when I was 11 I was taken in for questioning regarding drug distribution out of our house. My dad had marijuana growing in the basement and he used and sold it to neighbors and friends. When the police raided the house, my dad was at work. They asked me if I knew what was in the room. Because I had knowledge of it, I guess it was enough to bring me in for questioning. Even cuffed me and everything. My dad didn't show up for almost 8 more hours. As you can imagine, in a small town like the one I grew up, people talked, and I lived next to a massive apartment complex. I was the talk of the town for almost 2 years because of it. In like 5th grade there was this girl I was friends with, and we would always joke around and make fun of each other. So one day my mom was picking me up from school and me and the girl were walking out together, and she said, "See you tomorrow, Dumbo." I had big ears as a kid. Thankfully I grew into them. My mom heard her say that and wasn't having any of it. She stormed over and started yelling at her, saying things like, "Don't ever talk to my kid like that again. How would you like it if kids made fun of the freckles on your face?" She started bawling. I was so f***ing embarrassed my mom was yelling at this innocent little girl in front of dozens of kids. We left and I didn't talk to my mom at all on our way home. Thanks mom, I love you, but that was mean.